Okay, this video is for those of you who may be looking to push it a little bit. When it comes to becoming proficient, I hold a pretty high standard. And that should, in my opinion, be the standard for everybody. All right. Unfortunately, the baseline for a lot of people, as far as what they call good enough, is abysmal, right? Not even remotely close to being good enough. I try to, again, hold myself to a high standard when it comes to a firearm, right? Because somebody with experience, I hope to communicate to you, right, that you can train all you want, but when it comes to self-defense, right, the way you train and the standard to which you train to are going to be a huge determining factor, right, of how you're going to perform. And I definitely will argue your training should be way harder, right, than what the situation calls for. Okay. The reality around self-defense is, right, or just being good with a pistol in general, right, is when you're under stress, when the adrenaline is kicking in, you are not even remotely as close to as good as you are when you're sitting at a flat range. Not even remotely close, right? If you've got a, standard, 8-inch, 10-inch grouping at 10 yards, it's going to turn into a 40-inch grouping, right, at stress. There's way too many times I see headlines of police officer, the headline says 3 police officers shot 96 rounds and hit the suspect 3 times, right? And they just missed horribly, right? Again, it's adrenaline. And it is something that, especially the first time, that everybody falls victim to, where you just turn into a stumbling idiot, right? When the adrenaline kicks in, and it can get, very quickly to your disadvantage. And so we want to train to a higher standard so that when things fall apart under adrenaline, right, we still have a baseline muscle memory skill that we can fall on that is going to, right, at least be proficient enough, right, that we can come out on top. And that's ultimately what we're after. And so this is why I ultimately hold those really high standards. For an example, a long time ago, right, there was a famous video. It's called 21-foot rule. It says that if somebody with a knife is lunging at you, right, and they're within 21 feet, you will not be quick enough to pull out your pistol, right, and shoot them by the time they get to you, right? Well, that was in the 70s or 80s or whenever it was, right? Go look it up if you're curious. But to these standards, to this day, that's laughable. You could easily get your gun out in time if somebody's coming at you, right, with a knife. If you train. If you don't train, then yeah, you're definitely not going to be ready. You're going to stumble. You're going to fumble your gun. You're not going to get it out in time, and you're definitely not going to have good sight alignment whenever you shoot. And God knows where those bullets are going, and you're not going to be able to stop that guy. And this is all too common. People do not train enough, and when they find themselves in a situation, that they fall short pretty dramatically because they have not trained. We need to raise the standards higher. So, famous expression I like to say is, you're not going to rise to the occasion, right? Everybody thinks they're going to be a hero, right, if a situation arises, right? But the reality is you just sink to your level of training, right? So we want to raise our standards. We want to train to a standard that is going to be harder than what the situation calls for. This is where the advanced trainings come in. We don't want to do just one training and call it good. If you're going to bet your life on one day's worth of training, right, that's your decision, right? But for me, it's a never-ending journey. And so this is where I highly encourage you and invite you out to attend at least 2 days, right? Preferably 3 days of training so that we can get proficient. What's going to be involved in those second or third days of training is going to be a lot of continuing with target acquisition and speed, as well as drawing from the holster, and of course, a lot more about the psychology, right, of how to acquire and engage a target. We are going to be making sure that you don't get tunnel visioned, you don't get lost, you don't get onto too big of an autopilot. You can maintain a way higher breadth of situational awareness, right, by practicing it efficiently, right, while you're on the range. And what this means is holding you to a way higher standard than probably 95 to 99% of American shooters out there. And this is going to get you to true levels of proficiency. So with that being said, right, let's train to be fast. This is going to be a big thing that I emphasize, is making sure you can shoot at speed and acquire your target correctly. Of course, hit your target and know for a fact that when you're pulling the trigger, you're pulling it right on, a situation that calls for it, and versus one that doesn't. Let's raise our standards of proficiency, right, and absolutely be ready for the situation. I've had many clients that sign up not just for 3, but numerous days of training. I've had, the record is 8 days of training, and they absolutely came out the other end, right, ready for anything. So I really encourage you to, if you are going to take this seriously and you actually want to be ready, right, I hope to see you, more than one day. So with that being said, right, if you have any questions, please give me a call anytime, phone call, text, right? I'll do my best to answer any of your questions, right? And hope to see you on the range.